70s. The 1970s is the most influential decade of Hindi cinema. In the range and the quality that the decade offered, in terms of the art and craft of filmmaking, the music, fashion trends, the coexistence of commercial blockbusters with minimalist art house classics, the 1970s had it all. The Swinging 70s brings together a collection of essays that celebrate the myriad dimensions of this happening decade. The fashion, the music, the different genres of films, the iconic stars, the many moods and memories that have kept the decade alive in our collective consciousness. Put together by two film buffs who swear by the films of the decade, and including essays by almost every well-known name writing on Hindi cinema in India today. This is every film aficionado's gateway to a decade of cinema like no other. Nirupama Kotru is an officer of the Indian Revenue Service. Kotru has served in the Income Tax Department at Mumbai, Chennai, Delhi and Pune. On deputation, she served as Director in the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Director Films in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. As Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Culture, she looked after prestigious national academies and national museums. Vishal Bhardwaj, a renowned film director, writer, composer, singer and producer, is recognized for his multifaceted talents. He has directed 11 films, produced many more, and composed music for over 40, including the acclaimed Shakespeare trilogy, Makbul, Omkara, Heder. Notable works like Ishqiya, Dade Ishqiya and Talvar have earned him 3 international awards and 8 national awards, underscoring his significant influence on the narrative fabric of Indian cinema. They will appear in conversation with Jai Arjun Singh, an independent writer and critic. His books include The World of Hrishikesh Mukherjee, which won the Mami Excellence in Writing on Cinema Award, Janebi Doyara, seriously funny since 1983, and the anthology The Popcorn Essayists. He is currently working on a memoir centered on movie watching. And both Vishal and Jay have made contributions to the book. There are contributions from 40 authors in the book itself. Now please join me in giving a very warm welcome for this book launch, presented by TV9, first edition, Swinging 70s, When Hindi Cinema Came of Age. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Nirupama Kotru, Vishal Bhardwaj, and Jai Arjun Singh. AV, could we have the trailer, please?
Done.
And now I will invite our guests on stage to unveil the book. Sanjoy, will you come and join us? Sanjoy Roy, Managing Director of Teamwork Arts.
Is this okay? Is this audible?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here and welcome to this session about a book that all of us here are really enthusiastic about, as you can tell, and also about a decade in Hindi cinema that is very important to all of us in different ways. Now, of course, I think that that trailer that you saw did most of the work for me in terms of refreshing your memories of the decade. But again, just to quickly run by it, when the 1970s began, in the mainstream, Hindi cinema was smack dab in the middle of the Rajesh Khanna moment. You know, 3 years of really intense superstardom for a romantic superstar, and then of course that gave way to the era of the angry young man and the worlds created by mainstream filmmakers like Manmohan Desai, Prakash Mehra, Yash Chopra, and so on. And of course, there was also what we call the art cinema or the parallel cinema, spearheaded by Shyam Benegal in particular, which also had its own parallel star system almost, as it came to be known later with Shabana Azmi, Naseeruddin Shah, Smita Patel, and so on. And there was the middle cinema with Rishikesh Mukherjee, Basu Chatterjee, Gulzar Saab. There was a lot going on in that decade. And what I'd like our panelists here to do is to just talk a little bit about what that decade meant to them. So, Nirupama, since you have co-edited this book with Shantanu Chaudhuri, who couldn't be here at the festival, I just wanted to get an idea of what the 70s meant to you personally and why you think it's such an important time for Hindi cinema and why a book like this had to be done.
Oh, thanks, Jay, and first of all, thanks to JLF and Sanjoy for this lovely opportunity. So, as you know, Jay, I had been working formally also for films, promoting cinema when I was in Ministry of Information Broadcasting, but films has always been a passion, and I think what unites the three of us, besides our passion for cinema, obviously, is that we belong to Generation X, as the Americans call us, and our experience of watching films has been, I feel, very, very different from what the next Gen Y and now Gen Z, how they experience films. So we had a chat. I mean, I spoke to Vishal also about it, and a lot other people who are in the industry. As you know, Sriram Raghavan has contributed to the book, and Varun Grover, and Ketan Mehta, Subhash Ghai, Mohan Agashe, and of course a lot of professional film writers like yourself, a lot of National Film Award winners. So we wanted to collect all these perspectives about how we viewed films on single screens, how films at that time was possibly the only mode of entertainment available to all of us, and we consumed cinema, or rather were consumed by cinema to a great extent. I mean, I may refer to your essay, for instance, the kind of impact that a dialogue of Amitabh Bachchan written by Salim Javed has. It's deeply ingrained in our psyche. It's very difficult to forget it. The kind of villains you had, starting from Ajit to all of them, Pran Saab and Prem Chopra, everything, the music, the stars, obviously, and like you said, then the parallel cinema stars. I mean, Smita Patil came, set the screen ablaze, so did Shabana, Nasir, Om Puri, Amrish Puri, all the brilliant people from FTII, NSD. they found a space. And then you have this another amazing kind of cinema, middle of the road, with brilliant filmmakers, many of them from the Bimal Roy school, like Rishikesh Mukherjee, who was an editor and assisted Bimal Roy, and Gulzar Saab, and Basu Chatterjee, who did some of his best work in the 70s. So we thought, Shantanu and I, that it's very important for us to archive this period. Of course, archiving is a formal process as well, but a lot of the art and craft of how these films were made, what they meant, and what it meant to the people who made these films at that time, why it is important. So, and one of the first people I discussed the book with was Syed Mirza Saab, who I knew when he was FTI chair, and he was very happy. He said, you've chosen such an interesting decade, because 70s to beginning 80s was such an exciting period, and all of us coexisted, and all films were there, and there was space, and audience was welcoming of these films. Also, something Varun Grover said in his essay, he said there's a German word called Sehnsucht, which is a yearning or a longing for something which is not there, and we just can't put our finger on it, but there's this deep yearning in all of us, and we really yearn for that kind of cinema, and that's why we keep going back to these films. Whenever we get a chance, we watch reruns. You do it, I do it, I'm sure Vishalji does it too. Whenever on, one of the channels there's a rerun, I would happily watch a 70s film anytime. So that's how the book came about, and I got a lot of people from the industry also to share their perspective, and I think it'll be interesting not just to students who research cinema, but the lay reader who wants to experience that decade. Because I think it was a very prolific period for all the directors who did their best work at that time.
Yeah, as you suggested in what you said there's such a wide range covered in the book. And one thing I'd like to tell you, those of you, when you get your hands on the book, one of the first things you can do to get a sense of the range is to read Sriram Raghavan's essay and then read Rajat Kapoor's essay, because you have two completely different sensibilities there. You have Sriram Raghavan talking about his love for pulp cinema, for genre, for mainstream films, some of which are not seen as very reputable, they're seen as a bit disreputable. And then you have Rajat Kapoor talking about Money Calls Duvidha, which he makes the case that why are films like these seen as boring or outside the norm, they should be embraced the same way. But I'd like to come to Vishalji now. We've been watching your films for over 20 years now, your work as a writer, director, music director. One thing I was interested in knowing, apart from your feelings about the 70s as a decade, 1970s Hindi cinema, is there any way in which you've been influenced as a filmmaker by any of the 1970s films, either the mainstream films or the so-called art films or the middle cinema? Has that worked its way into your own filmmaking style?
Yeah, of course, absolutely, 100%. Because I am 1965 born, so in 1970 they were the uniforming years of my creativity, and they were only source of entertainment available. And my father was in the government service, so his job was transferable. So we used to be in small cities like Najibabad, then Bijnor, and the Meerut. So going to theatre was like a whole ceremony, and the impression those films had on my still I'm so influenced by. I mean, we all grew up on Amar Akbar Anthony and films like that. Then Guldar Saab cinema, of those days, Mere Apne, Sholay, Mere Apne, I remember, the dialogues became so famous at that time. And the main thing, now it is a little less. But in those days, the film dialogues used to become like the super hit, I remember when Sholay became a major hit. In fact, when Sholay was released, the first 2 weeks it was called a flop. And slowly, after 2 weeks, people realized that, what a film that is. And then it became, what Sholay is. So Sholay का पूरा एक dialogue का एक long play record release हुआ था. So before that, I remember Guldar Saab's that Mere Apne. सो उसमें विनोद खन्ना एंड शत्रुघ्न सिन्हा दोनों की पहली फिल्म थी. सो उसमें आई रिमेंबर एज अ चाइल्ड, आई स्टिल रिमेंबर दो लाइन कि शाम आए तो कहने कि छेनू आए तो बदन में ज्यादा गर्मी है तो बेशक आके निकाल ले, मेरे किसी लड़के को हाथ लगाए तो मोहल्ले के जलाकर राख कर दूंगा. So do we, and now if you see गुलजार साहब, do you can we घासलेट बेटा घासलेट मिट्टी का तेल, अभी भी समझ में नहीं आया तो आग लगा के दिखाऊं. You know these kind of like one liners. वैसे भी हम, we all Indians, we love one liners. Even in our normal day to day life, we look for it, you know, thing to give a punchline in our family life. And so I'm totally a person from 70s. Then I remember Guldar Saab's, I think that song was Kinara. एक ही ख्वाब कई बार देखा है मैंने, तूने साड़ी में उरस ली है मेरी चाबियां घर की. और वो धर्मेंद्र के ऊपर पिक्चराइज हुआ था और गेस्ट थे उसमें, और भूपी जी ने गाना गाया था. वो गाना मैं आज तक भुला ही नहीं पाता हूँ, क्योंकि उसमें इतने लाइक हस्बैंड वाइफ, यू नो, दे आर ही सिंगिंग एंड लाइक ए वेरी नॉर्मल की एक ही ख्वाब कई बार देखा है मैंने, एक ही ख्वाब कई बार देखा है मैंने, तूने साड़ी में उरस ली है मेरी चाबियां घर की. ताश के पत्तों पे लड़ती है कभी खेल में मुझसे, ताश के पत्तों पे लड़ती है कभी खेल में मुझसे, और कभी लड़ती भी ऐसे है कि बस खेल रही हो. तो पूरा वो इतना खूबसूरत. देन आंधी तेरे बिना जिंदगी से कोई शिकवा तो नहीं, यू नो, वो जब हम जवान हुए तो, और आज तक यही गाना, यू नो, रोमांस में यही गाना नक्सलियों में चलता है कि तेरे बिना जिंदगी से कोई शिकवा तो नहीं, तेरे बिना जिंदगी भी लेकिन जिंदगी तो नहीं. तो ये 70s का जो असर था, आई विल बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, मेरी वो उम्र पैरेलल सिनेमा देखने की नहीं थी, बिकॉज वी वर ऑल ऑब्सेस्ड विद मेन स्ट्रीम कमर्शियल सिनेमा. एंड वो भी अमर अकबर एंथनी वगैरह इतनी खूबसूरत मजेदार फिल्में थी. सो आई एम टोटली, यू नो, देन 80s, बिकॉज एट दैट टाइम आई वाज in 84 I became a teenager, but at that time I think our cinema started going down. Till 70s we were very, you know, even early 80s. I think Qarz was early, must be early 80s.
80, yeah.
Qarz was early 80. And Kabhi Kabhi was 70s, I remember. The music of Kabhi Kabhi, the whole nation used to sing, मैं पल दो पल का शायर हूँ, या कभी कभी मेरे दिल में ख्याल आता है. आज आप वो फिल्म देखें तो मे भी आपको उसमें डेटेड चीजें नजर आ सकती हैं, मगर द होल नेशन यूज्ड टू बी लाइक साहिल लुधियानवी ने पूरा देश लूट लिया था अपनी पोएट्री से, और ऐसा भर के रसदार फिल्में बना करती थी. तो 70s 80s में फिर, यू नो, देन व्हेन दीज साउथ इंडियन फिल्म्स, हिम्मत वाला और वो सब, तो म्यूजिक भी पूरा एकदम डाउन जाने लगा. आई थिंक आई एम स्पीकिंग अ लॉट, वी हैव वेरी लेस टाइम.
No, this is all fascinating, and Nirupama, I know you're such a big fan of the music of that era. We could say, you know, if we had enough time for it, you could sing Rim Jim Gire Savan, which seems like an appropriate song for this. But if you could just tell us something about your feelings about the music of that time, and also whatever decline happened, if it happened in the 1980s.
So, Vishal ji and I are big music buffs, and I think R.D. Burman Bhakts, if I may say so. So, I think that was such an exciting time, because S.D. Burman and all the older music directors were kind of slowly retiring, and R.D. Burman came into his own, and I think what an amazing range he has. If you remember from Amar Prem, which is when his father finally said, Ki, I'm proud to be called his father now. For the first time, I think S.D. Burman acknowledged it, and the lyricists, Anand Bakshi, R.D. Burman made a superb team for Shakti Samanta, and then R.D. Burman continued with Majroo Sultanpuri, who used to write for S.D. Burman, as you know, all the romantic great songs. So they did all the Nasir Hussain films, for instance, and Sahil Ludhanvi was still around. He wrote some films with Khayyam. Jaidev started coming into his own. Rajesh Roshan came with, you know, Kala Patthar was Rajesh Roshan and Sahir. And you also had other, Vanraj Bhatia came up. He was a brilliant music director. He did all the Shyam Benegal films. if you remember, Junoon and Bhumika and others, and Vasant Dev came up as a lyricist. You also had a very productive period for Lakshmikant Pyarelal, who was doing all these great Manoj Kumar films. We were discussing the music, I remember, because both of us loved that music, and you had this lyricist called Santosh Anand who wrote all the songs for Manoj Kumar films. So such a great variety of music. I think it was absolutely a very, very rich decade in terms of that kind of variety. And as we know, S.G. Varman and R.D. both were very fond of Kishore Kumar. So Kishore Kumar really dominated 70s. In fact, I think Naushad Saab has said it somewhere very disparagingly that was just R.D. and Kishore. But I mean, I beg to differ with Naushad Saab, although he's such a great music director. I think in terms of the soundtracks, whether you take Sholay or Shalimar, R.D. Varman is unmatched. To date, you know how popular he is. Everybody keeps remixing R.D. Varman. And that was his peak. The decade belonged to him, absolutely. So, you know, Vishalji, would you like to add something? Because I know we are also...
And Manoj Kumar, you know, his films were so, you know, socially such relevant. You want to talk to about Manoj Kumar?
Yeah.
बाकी जो कुछ बचा तो महंगाई मार गई. या शोर में वो एक जरा सा उसको छुआ तो वो टोपी के अंदर रोटी छुपा के लेके आई है. एक प्यार का नगमा है, मौजों की रवानी है. क्या खूबसूरत गाना, और क्या वो सब्जेक्ट था उस फिल्म का, शोर का. यू नो दिस कैकोफोनी विच वी नाउ, अब तो किसी और ही लेवल, अब पता नहीं मनोज कुमार क्या बनाते, क्योंकि अब शोर का जो हालत है हमारे जिंदगी में. पर उस वक्त में वो शोर फिल्म देखिए, आपको डिस्टर्ब करती है कि कैसे वो he is affected by this cacophony.
I think we had actually short of time. It's a pity we won't be able to take audience questions, but I just wanted to also touch on something that you mentioned earlier. Ways of watching films back then. Now, I assume both of you were, you know, in the 70s as children or as adolescents, you were watching these films on the big screen. And you know, just a few years later, I think by the early 80s, by the mid 80s, the video cassette era comes in. And I know from first-hand experience how viewing patterns changed completely. I think I can probably count on the fingers of both hands the films that I watched on the big screen, you know, after the years after the video cassette era came in. Do you think that also made a big difference to the particular sort of nostalgia we feel, because it's a larger than life experience, you know, and you know, it's sometimes there's a certain sort of film experience that has to involve being in that magic theatre in the dark with a big screen. Is that something that affected your...
I think the community viewing experience is completely different, and Sholay, the way Ramesh Sippiji introduced stereophone sound and the big 70mm, it just blew our minds. I mean, it was just amazing to hear, you know, one track with those horses ka hooves that decoyed to the scene, you know, yahan se, and then the tabla plays, and then the Basanti chase thing is happening. It was mind-blowing. I think we've never heard those kind of tracks before. So you just can't experience that on a television screen at home. Although we've all watched these films on VCR later many times. We know हमारे कैसेट घिस जाते थे literally देख के all these films. And parallel cinema we really didn't have access to much because I was too young. I don't know about Vishalji, but we didn't have access to film festivals so much. But we watched all of them on Doordarshan, so we should thank Doordarshan for making these films available to us. Otherwise we wouldn't have watched all the Shyam Benegal greats. So.
Also, just the process of imagining films, this is something, you know, the essay that I did is actually about audio cassettes, like, you know, the Vishalji mentioned just now, the Sholay dialogue track, and audio cassettes like that which I listened to long before I actually got to watch the films. So, you know, so you have this, there's this imagination, there's a sense of larger than lifeness that is also happening. That was also a very important part of it.
Absolutely.
What do you think really set the decade apart from the decade that led up to it, the 1960s, and of course the decade that followed, the 1980s, which many of us tend to vilify now? What is special about the 70s and, you know, in the context of those two?
I think what came out when Vishalji and I were talking, for instance, one, it was this decade of storytelling. Stories were very important, and secondly was violence, because of the degradation all around us and corruption had seeped into public life, I think that reflected a lot. I think this is a recurring theme I'm getting from everybody.
Yeah, and I think one more thing was till 70s was very obvious, is that, you know, a desire to say something deeper, even in commercial cinema. And, you know, to be dignified and, you know, say something more than buzzer. more than the surface. More than the surface. That was really, from 80s, you know, it was the success at any cost. That, you know, and that started from 80s. Till late, even early 80s, 82 तक, ये था कि अच्छी चीज देके अपना हमें सक्सेस चाहिए. 80s के बाद आई थिंक हमारी जिंदगी में भी यही हुआ कि हम लोग रिफ्लेक्ट कर रहे थे, जो हम लोग सोसाइटी थे, कि हमें किसी भी कीमत पे हमारे घर में पैसा आना चाहिए, पड़ोसी का जो होता हो. तो उससे हमारी सोसाइटी का रिफ्लेक्शन सिनेमा था.
Thanks so much to both of you. I think you're going to get more of Vishal ji now because he's in the next session as well. But do please look out for the book. You won't regret it. It's every bit as varied as that decade was for cinema. Thanks so much.
It's a gem. It's a gem of a book. There's so much insight in this book.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Nirupama, Kotru, Vishal Bhardwaj and Jai Arjun Singh. Congratulations on the launch of the book, Swinging 70s, When Hindi Cinema Came of Age. Thank you so much. This session was presented to you by TV9. And we will...